Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. Mr. Lees, did you want to go first?
No, but I will. No, Sheriff Bensenko and I have had the opportunity to speak quite a bit about this, and in fact, when riding with him in the fire zone on Sunday with Supervisor Baugh, when I told him this was something that I was having a hard time supporting, he stopped the car and tried to get me out of it in the fire zone there. So, and this is why, and I think this bears taking a little bit of time, but I'll try to hurry here. Number one, we're talking about the cost that's involved with this, and certainly the things that I've mentioned are all true. And I want a new jail. I think that it would be nice to have additional leverage that we can encourage people to make correct choices. But as you well know, also, we can't spend money we don't have. I will never recommend that. And so because of that, I think we need to look very careful at what we're asking to do here. So we're talking about an initial cost of a jail of about $35 million. That's just the starting point. We all good intent, we believe that will do it, but we're not sure. And any penny over that, we have to cover. Well, any penny over $33 million, we have to cover. So if we start digging down and find that we've got something wrong in the tanks beneath the gas station, or that the EIR is going to make us do something different because we're taking out 20 parking places that are now going to be moved to the street somewhere. I mean, things like that. There are things that we have not been able to quantify at this point. Now, that's not a normal for any project. I mean, we always have those things. The difference in this project and other projects is that we build in these contingencies, we build in these buffers, and although we might have a slight contingency here, we don't have the buffer that we have because of the economic climate and the differences. We don't have the reserve. We are just going in we're going all in, basically, to make this project go. The county fleet station, there's likely to be additional costs there. We're not exactly sure how that's going to work. Hopefully we'll be able to save some money, but I just share with you that we've lost that. We don't have that buffer. Our discretionary general funds are limited. There's no question about it. And so, when we were asked as a department to say, okay, can we fund this? I went to my staff and we basically said, well, no, of course not. We know that. I mean, we know the budget pretty well. We said, no, we know we can't fund it. Then there's no money. And so I said, well, no, that's not the question. Could we fund it is the question. And so that's why you see things on here that might not be very palatable to the public. You see things like the opportunity to take Hatchet Ridge dollars, a sales tax increase. My goal was to throw the options on here so you could see, yeah, these options are ways that we can do this. It's not necessarily my recommendation, and let me be very clear, Sheriff Bensenko is not recommending a sales tax increase either. So I'll be very clear there. But I thought it was incumbent upon me and my staff to share with the board those abilities or those opportunities to fund this thing, and then determine what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So that's why you see those different items on there. We needed to look at everything. The other thing I want you to be cognizant of, and we've all looked at this board report and the numbers and staff report, and every time we look, we see something different. And I was talking to another department head, and the light came on that we're not asking for a $5.5 million increase here in annual operating cost. We're actually looking for a $7 million increase here in operating cost. And let me explain why. $1.5 million of this, or a little less, is actually going to open the third floor of the jail now. And so when you're talking about looking at the list of where the money could come from, and we're looking at 109 money, $500,000 to $1.5 million, $500,000 going to buy beds out of county, you're looking at actually already using that 109 money to open the third floor of the jail. So we need actually $7 million in order to open the third floor of the jail and the new facility. Now the total is still the same. It's still $18.8 million. That's still the same, the annual operating cost. But it's important, I think, that we see that. And then if you look, you see, we try to come up with, okay, what other things can we do? We reduce. So where are the dollars? Where are our discretionary dollars going? And so we just laid them all out there as to where they're going, and these are the things that will be cut. And when you look at the board report and it says up to $2 million elsewhere, these are the things we're talking about. We're talking about our ADA projects that, by law, we have to have in place a plan to cover all ADA projects. We don't have to do them all in 1 year, but we've got $100,000 a year going to that. So that helps make up that $2 million. You're talking about our general fund that goes to the Women's Refuge. You're talking about taking that back. You're talking about our contribution to the library. Now, we can't take it all back because we have a commitment to the public library for a certain length of time because of the lease, because of the grant and the lease bonds that are involved there. But you are talking about taking a major portion of those library funds back. You're talking about not funding the EDC at any level. You're talking about the nuisance abatement, which we're trying to get up for the marijuana eradication and things. That's resource management. That's a general fund that goes to resource management. You're talking about taking that away. And you're talking about an A87 offset. What we've tried to do, especially with public safety, because they were hit so hard with the 87, is we've tried to create an offset that would reduce the amount of cost as it relates to IT and things like that.
You might describe what A87
Okay, the 87 is the mechanism that we use to charge other departments for the cost of internal services, whether it be the Board of Supervisors, IT, computer, things like that. Well, we've been offsetting that with our discretionary general fund from about $1 million to help keep that down. So a part of this is all a part of what you're seeing. We're going to have to take that away. Now, when we take that away, what does that do? That increases the cost of public safety. I mean that's what you're doing there. You're increasing the cost because now they're not getting the benefit of that offset. Victim witness is a part of that, which is in that discretionary dollars. The Shasta Community Health Center is a big part of that. And so these are all things that you're talking about being able to reapportion those monies.
Any of the hill country, too?
No. I'm not sure of that. I don't believe so, though. I don't believe so.
Marty's shaking her head.
Yeah. But illegal dumping, that stuff, all that stuff, would go away. Now, maybe that's okay, but I think it's important we understand that we're not just saying, okay, we're going to reapportion $2 million. There's real live programs and people on the under end of it. We're talking about $300,000 from a general the assistance that we give to mental health, general fund assistance, we're talking about maybe $300,000 a year, taking that away too. And so it's not just reapportioning dollars from somewhere, it's from somebody. And so I think it's important that we understand exactly where that's coming from. And one of the things that's pretty important to me is that all the things that we're talking about, and if we phase this in, and if we do all those things I just said, we only cover about half the cost. I mean, we're only at about $3 million. So we do all those things we've said, we're at about $3 million. Now, with that being said, the state owns this jail for 30 to 50 years. So don't think it's the county-owned jail. The state owns this jail for 30, 50 years. Now, we assume that the state is going to play fair and they're going to say, you just operate it. But certainly within the guidelines of this grant is that it is subject to their conditions and specifications. Now, part of that is having it up and running. The part that scares me about that is that the state has a way of sometimes changing their definitions of what their standards and expectations are. And that scares the heck out of me. And the fact that we're sitting here with the state-owned jail for 30 to 50 years worries me. And I especially when I know that we're going into this all in and still only being able to open half of it. So that worries me. And I think that's real consideration. Understand that right now the state, before 109, and they've been trying to, they were sued by the feds and they had to get rid of and dump, let out offenders early. With all this going on, they were about, before 109, they were about at 155% capacity, meaning they were over their capacity by 55%. So Since 109, that has dropped to 137%. So they've dropped about 20% of their capacity. This is the part that scares me. They're still over by 37%, and at some point, they're going to need to do something with those people. And I don't want them looking at our facility and say, well, there's a state facility. It's not really a state facility, and I know, that might be a little dramatic on my part. But I got to tell you, I don't trust them. I don't trust them. I mean, they're why we're in this mess. And so the other part of this is probably more about where we want to be when we grow up. Right now, depending who you listen to, Shasta County incarcerates per capita the second or third, depending on who you listen to. We're the second or third highest in the state. That means out of all 58 counties, we are the second or third highest. We have the second and third highest rate of incarceration. So that means we put more people in jail than any other county but one. That might be a good thing. Maybe that's what we want to be. And by adding this jail, this per capita, by adding this other jail, maybe we could be number one. I don't.
Well, I think the interesting comparison would be is it just a total number that's per capita, or is it a percentage as to a number of arrests? So we just throw more people in jail, or do we arrest more people, therefore more people in jail? But
yeah,
that's for another discussion.
And there's a distinction there, certainly. There is a distinction there. But the point, and again, that's I think that has to be taken into consideration, because is that what we want to be? The state prison system has been locking people up for decades and half centuries, and they haven't been successful. It hasn't worked. We're hoping that 109 is going to work. We're hoping that 109 is going to actually change folks. And we know it's going to take 3 or 4 years, and we know it might get worse before it gets better. But, our hope is that we are actually going to have some success rates. Some will not change. We know that. But we're hoping we'll have some success rates. And they should come, actually, probably before we could get the new jail built. I guess if I wanted to be number one at something of a county, I'd want to be number one at the recidivism rate, or number one at changing folks. It would be different if we had the dollars and the money to go forward with this. It'd be a whole different discussion. I'd love to be able to have those options. But we're not taking into any consideration about any increase in cost anywhere. We looked at the $800,000, well, about $800,000, $900,000 in that number was what I had planned to use when we agreed to do an equity swap with the courts. And I had planned to use that money that comes back to us 2015 to move public safety out of the building that the court's going to occupy, or the land that the court's going to occupy, and put them somewhere else. You're talking about now using those dollars also. So again, this is not without ramifications to people, programs, and our long-term goals. And so as much as I want to, and I mentioned this to Sheriff Pasenko weekly, daily, as much as I want to say, gosh, I wish we could do that, and I'm starting to feel like Ebenezer Scrooge, I got to tell you that financially, fiscally, to be fiscally responsible, I just can't put the county into this mess. And let me just, okay.
Maybe the board could speak.
Okay, I'll stop.
Thank you. Supervisor Haas.
Thank you. Very well done. And our motto, and we've stuck by it, we don't spend money that we don't have, right? And I heard from several people talking about economic development and jobs. What did this county do at the June election? But we turned down a $135 million project that would have paid a portion of this. Believe me, it would have made this decision a lot easier for us. But the voters, a few people decided that they didn't want that down there, and it got turned down. And what kind of a message do you think that sends to developers? Don't come to Shasta County because you're not going to make it here. So our future looks pretty bleak, in my opinion, for that very thing. And the other, AB 109, I've been saying this all along, without jobs for these people that come back, they're going to be right back in the system again. No job, no money, you're back stealing again. So I'll tell you, we really, if we are lucky enough to get another developer to look at us, we better have a different attitude. So I'm going to support you on this, and we don't have the money. I don't see how we can possibly do it, and we need it. I won't disagree with anybody. We need it, but if we can't pay for it, we can't have it.
Supervisor Hartman.
I strongly believe that Mr. Lees and Mr. Hawes have made very valid points, and you know, we've known, we've been talking about this, we've been struggling with this for months and months and years. I don't want to be on the board that votes down a jail, because I know how much we need it. I know how historically this county, the boards before us have been such strong proponents of public safety and law enforcement. I want that hammer. I want to be able to hold people accountable for their actions. But I don't know how we can do it. And, you know, I like to think positive, like to think that if we build it, we'll find the money, but I don't believe that we can. I think there's so many things that have gone the wrong way, that haven't given us that ability to grow, to increase our funding. I have no faith in the state getting any better anytime soon, and I can't bring myself to support it, and I'm sorry, Tom. I know we need it.
Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. Mr. Lees, I want to be number one at something in Shasta County. I want to be number one at ensuring public safety. In my mind, the number one responsibility and the reason that local government was formed and initiated is to protect the public. You can look to the history of our nation as we came across the Old West. Who was the first and only employee of a local entity, town, city, or whatever they called it? It was the marshal. It was the sheriff. Let me take the other side of your sky is falling perception. What do we say to the folks out there? And we're getting these calls. All of us are getting these calls. The sheriff is getting them. What do we say to the folks that can't protect their businesses and their homes? What do we say to the folks in Cottonwood, California, who have now begun, I believe, at least one or two more neighborhood watches because we don't have the ability to keep the criminals in jail? I'm not looking for you to talk. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this time. What I do want to have us do, without simply saying no to a jail, I understand, and I'm as conservative as the rest of this board when it comes to spending money. The mantra that you've adopted, I agree with. We can't spend any money we don't have. But what are the alternatives if we simply, flatly turn this down today? We have an option here to discuss those, and so I'm hoping that we simply don't make a decision to turn this down without discussing other options, because once this leaves the table, then it's gone. It's gone. And I know the time is late for everybody, but I think this deserves a full opportunity to be discussed. When I read in the newspaper the other day, and this is just one entity, this is just the city of Reading. These are comments from the Reading Police Department. Burglaries up by 64%, larceny by 51%, vehicle theft by 81%, property crime by 57%. Chief Paletti, as being quoted here, is saying that violent crimes are also on the rise. Cases driven by robberies, which jumped 29%. Going on down the article, 3,730 more calls than last year. To me, that's significant. What we have created in the county is a revolving door for repeat offenders, and I'm quoting from the newspaper. In my mind, catch and release is for fish, not for criminals. Are we sending a clear message if we don't find a way to build and fund this jail? And I'm bringing this up for sake of discussion. Are we sending a clear message that we do not have the ability to contain or restrict crime in Shasta County? That is my concern. I believe that's an equal concern to the challenges of the finances. There has to be a better answer than simply we don't have the money. If we don't have the money and we don't build a jail, and by the way, this is not about a new jail. We don't care if it's pretty and shiny. This is about providing bed space for criminals that need to be locked up. The transportation issue, Linda, was in regards to the site in Anderson that was being proposed, and that site was eliminated, so that's not an additional cost here. The bottom line is that even as the Chief Probation Officer presented in his thoughts to us, is we need to have rehabilitation, absolutely. But if we don't have the ability to incarcerate, if we don't have all of the abilities, we have to have rehab, we have to have the ability to incarcerate as well, then there is a basic instrumental flaw in the system. The system is broken. If we don't make some type of forward decision, and I don't know that I have the answer today either, if we don't make some type of a forward position, something progressive, then the flawed system that has a crack in it now crumbles. That's my concern for the future. As much as we don't want to be the board that leaves a legacy of debt, neither do we want to be a board that leaves a legacy of criminals are welcome in Shasta County. Because that's what we're hearing on the streets. If you talk to the chiefs, if you talk to those who are responsible, if you talk to the sheriff, that's what they hear. If you want confirmation of that, don't take my word for it. Melissa Fowler Bradley related it in who is showing up for court. There is no hammer to cause them to do so. We have to have answers. We have to find answers to that. Just a couple more thoughts here that I want to just draw out. Options. We don't have to decide today to fully fund and fully staff both jails. And that's the money that you presented, and your figures are accurate. They're absolutely accurate. In fact, I called Mr. Minturn. I wanted to know if he would affirm that the costs and the estimates and so forth are accurate too, and everybody agrees that these are the real costs involved. That's if we fully staff both of those facilities. And that's the scary part. The more reasonable part would be to consider what is the least expensive option and look at that today as well, because that's the opposite of the we don't have $6 million annually, but do we have the ability for $2.3 million or whatever that figure is annually that starts that process 4 to 5 years from now? It's still a guess, I admit that, but it's worth discussing rather than simply saying we don't have the full 6. Is there a closer solution with less money? In terms of the matching funds, wow. I call that creativity when $2 million turns into $35 million. That's impressive. That's a good use of our local resources. The funding for the float of the loan, everyone concerned about the use of the Birdie money, legitimate concerns, obviously. But in terms of finding cash, I do believe within county resources we can float the loan. in addition to the Bernie money that's setting in resource management, there's at least another $1 million setting there that's been there for several years. Those monies could temporarily be used as well for financing a loan fund. There are other options, and we're not looking at everything here. Now, a question that I would like to ask then, after I've pontificated enough, would be, what is the need in terms of time, absolute deadline for making a decision? Must we make a decision today to meet the criteria established by the state of California for this potential grant? Does that have to be decided today?
We need to be able to reach a certain point by March of 2013. And I will ask Mr. Minturn to explain why he believes time is of the essence, because of the amount of time it's going to take to get the information the state is requiring to meet their goals and objectives by is that not correct? So that's the reason we are pushing for a decision. Now, you know, we had a preliminary decision here back in March or February when we talked about this. And then the financial position wasn't any better, but we were in hopes that it would get better. Well, in the past 4 months or 5 months, nothing has changed, and in fact, it's gotten worse.
So is someone going to answer that question at this point? That's the same question I have. I'd like to know what our timeline is, what requirements we have.
Mr. Lees was exactly right on the March, I believe it's 13th deadline to accept the funding opportunity, and Mr. Minturn can speak more directly to the real estate due diligence and the CEQA process.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Pat Minturn, Public Works Director. The grant has an aggressive timeline that has us interacting with the state bureaucracy. The State Public Works Board is kind of the gatekeeper for projects, and they review to look at things like, do you have the land sewn up? Do you have the environmental documents sewn up? And where are you at with the design? So task one is our next big milestone. We've cleared the first milestone, which was to start CEQA and to get an initial submittal on the real estate due diligence. So in order to proceed, the staff report recommends a $300,000 allocation now, so that we can continue along that pathway towards task one, which is getting before the State Public Works Board. When we get in front of the State Public Works Board, they expect to see CEQA done, the California Environmental Quality Act compliance. It can either be wrapped up and adopted, or it can be in litigation, but it needs to be complete. So in order for this project to go forward, it is not necessarily make or break today. However, in order to stay on the timeline and make those deadlines to come, we need to continue to tromp along that path pretty aggressively. We need to start spending some money. We need to go out with the CEQA document, the public hearings that would accompany that, and the traffic studies and so forth. So you're looking at substantial investments. It's not a absolute make or break decision point today, but we're getting there, and the state was really demanding some answers, and they agreed to wait until today for some answers on some specific items, but they expect to see a commitment to go forward very shortly.
Just for clarification, the $300,000 would be pretty much committed today if we want to keep on a timeline that we can meet?
Yes, actually, my recommendation was that we actually come forward before today. Today, we can still hire an architect to answer some of the key design questions to get through task one.
Okay, and are there some other costs like these that could come up in the next month or two or three? Or does this money carry us until March?
Doesn't carry us until March. It will probably carry us through the remainder of this year. It'll get us in. It would be enough for us to do an RFP, to hire an architect, and come back to the board to award that contract. It would get us going on the CEQA document, assuming there aren't any particular hiccups on the CEQA document, assuming the state doesn't come back for more details about the land. The $300,000 will get us well along that pathway. But by the end of this year, that will have been expended and we'll be back for more, very likely.
Thank you, Mr. Minturn. Mr. Keough, do you want to weigh in before I do? Go ahead.
Yep. Thank you, Chairman Modi. I'm going to yield a part of my time to Mr. Lees to make some responses to Mr. Baugh's observations, and then I have 3 quick observations that I will make.
How much time do I have?
Not much.
Very quickly. I mean, I want to have hope and I want to be optimistic, and I am. And just very quickly in answer to the questions, what do we tell people? You know, I think we are on the right path. I think we're looking for alternative justice. You know, I believe by locking people up, and you've heard me say this before, it's no different. You know, what we're doing here is buying new ambulances to send to the bottom of the cliff once people have fallen off. What I want to do is spend money on putting a fence at the top of the cliff and keep them from falling off. And that's what actually we're doing. We're doing that through 109. And you think about coming up with $2 or $3 million. I mean, if we put that towards mental health, we know, I mean, data shows us that the majority of those breaking those crimes are either suffer from some type of mental illness or drug and alcohol addiction. Can you imagine if we took $3 million and put it towards some of those programs, the reduction in crime we would have in this community? I think it'd be significant. And so I do, and I think that's where 109 and realignment is taking us. I just am not naive enough to think that we're going to get there tomorrow. It's a couple years. But that would be my answer. That's where our hope lies. And I think that's more a significant change for our future than it is in the jail. Although I'm supported, I understand you, and I don't want to go against my boss here. They fired the Plumas County CAO when he rose the issue of they spent too much money. But so I'm aware of that.
I have 3 observations. Yesterday evening, when we attended the workshop, Chief Foreman made an excellent presentation on the plan. There are 3 elements to that plan. Number 1, supervision. Number 2, custody allocation of resources. And number 3, treatment, programs, and services. Chief Foreman, I agree with you that in my mind, the 3rd one is of paramount importance. Observation number 2 is this. I am persuaded by the observations that Mr. Lees has made concerning fiscal responsibility and the reallocation of resources. Parenthetically, Mr. Cadd spoke to the same thing, and I think there is value in that. And number 3 is this, and no one that has spoken to us this afternoon or morning has addressed this subject. What we are talking about here, and let's not make any mistake about it, we are talking about creating a mini prison that will hold 613 people right in the heart of downtown Redding, California, right in the heart of a business district and a residential district. And is that what we want for our community? I think not.
Okay. I'll take a shot at it here. I do have a couple of questions. The talk about moving the county station, hasn't there been some consideration or thought about combining that with some other resources or facilities that we have?
Yeah, that has been a long-range goal of mine, and we've actually have eliminated some of the services that used to be provided by that, and that's why I'm not as concerned with. I think that number that was given, that 1.5 or 1.2, is probably a good number.
Okay, and then second of all, you mentioned the money that will come back from the bond debt payment, about $950,000 that you looked at to maybe do a remodel of the court. That would be a one-time cost, correct? The remodel.
Actually, what we'd be looking at doing, what we'd be doing is selling bonds for the remodel. It's too much for a one-time. So we would be selling bonds and then use that ongoing revenue from the old bonds to pay for the new bonds.
How much are you expecting the bonds to be?
I'm going to look to Mr. Minter. We've actually, nobody wants to commit on this. We've actually thrown some numbers around, but we're talking probably $10 million remodel of the courthouse. Let me just defer to him real quick on this.
Remodel of the courthouse is 87,000 square feet, and so say 100,000 square feet at $100 a square foot won't do it. So to remodel the entire building, I've discussed maybe tearing down half of it and using it for parking, but I would say at a bare minimum $10 million.
Yeah. We were shooting at 13.
And how much is our bond now with the jail and the Justice Center? How much are we paying with that 950?
We finished that in 2015. You know what we're paying annually, so I know what you're asking, what the original bond on that was. I will have to look.
The bond on the courthouse, I believe, was $7 million, and the bond on the jail originally cost $24 million many years ago.
Yeah, so I'd have to
So
look.
hopefully it wouldn't cost us, particularly with today's rates and stuff, it wouldn't cost the whole 950. But okay, that's fine. I just want to get an idea for that. Okay, my comments, a couple of things. One, I want to congratulate the sheriff on his due diligence, as well as Mr. Lee's. Your job is to bring forward all options, all plans, and I think some of the comments were made today already, and I think some of the citizens have heard that. Certainly heard from the people from Bernie and about the Bernie money, as well as taxes and stuff, but your job and yours is to bring us all the options and let us try to decide what to do next, and rather than just say no. So I appreciate that and applaud you for that. As I look through the funding that's here, I can see now that in your mind you've committed some of the bond payment money. I agree with the comments made from the people from Bernie as far as the Hatchet Ridge community benefit money that I don't, in my opinion, think it should be used for county operational costs. I think it's one-time money basically, and it should be used for infrastructure costs. Now, whether it all goes to build a library or a fire hall or a park or a baseball field in Bernie, or some of it goes towards building some infrastructure facilities for the county in that area, remains to be seen. We do need to have something done up there in the future with a whole host of things, including communications and things like that are essential to your safety. So, in my opinion, I'm not going to commit all that money to just libraries, ballparks, and that kind of stuff. But I do agree that it has to be spent in something that has a direct impact on the Bernie Basin area and improves the lives and safeties of the people who live up there. As far as the AB 109 funding, I think that's a very highly unlikely source in the future. I'm very skeptical that the governor's proposition or initiative is going to pass, and we're going to see some trigger cuts and major fallout coming in the future. I have no confidence in that whatsoever. I don't have the desire to make serious cuts to other departments within the county to cut the ability to provide. We've already cut them for the last few years and continue to make them hold the line. I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to ask. Prop 172 money would be great if it continues to grow, but that will be helpful. We heard today from a number of people that they feel like a sales tax as well as a parcel tax will be difficult at best. I think I would agree with that. I think I would just point out that it wouldn't be a situation where people would think that we as a board approve that tax or approve that parcel tax. If it were to be that way, it would be a vote of the people and they would ultimately decide. I do agree with the assessment that it's definitely an uphill battle. So what I would like to follow up on just a little bit, a couple comments that were made about AB 109 monies. I agree with some of the comments that have been made already, as well as some of the perspectives of Mr. Foreman and Ms. McKenzie, and it's been made before, is that you can't spend all the money on incarceration. We've got to have other programs in place. The state's proven to us that you can't spend all the money on incarceration. They're a miserable failure, and they've passed the buck to us. However, on the flip side, there is a point to the sheriffs and the chiefs, the police chiefs and stuff, conversation. One of our most successful programs is our addicted offender program. And the reason why it's been effective over the years is there's a consequence if you don't complete the program or if you fail along the way in the program. And that's what makes those people continue to go to the program and at least probably for the first few months. It keeps them in the program until they then maybe get the will or desire to be successful and get out of the program and graduate. We truly are in a bad situation where, and I probably know better than most of you, what is happening in our criminal world. And there are no consequences. They laugh. They laugh at the officers. They laugh at the judges. They laugh at the jail personnel. It's like, hey, quick, get me out of here. Why are you wasting my time? Let me go home. I got other stuff to do, like go steal more stuff. And then the last thing I want to talk about, though, is, and one of the people who spoke today, I think it might have been Ms. Johnson, talked about, well, we need a new plan, a better plan, something else other than just, well, I agree with you. The problem is no one has it. The best they came up with was AB 109. And that's going to be a huge burden on us for 3 to 5 years before we find out whether or not it is successful. It may be, it may not, but we won't know for 3 to 5 years. And I will just add, City Manager Kurt Starman spoke last night at this workshop, and he unfortunately pointed out that while we are suffering the burdens of AB 109, and the sheriff and the police chiefs are being overwhelmed with this, at the state level, they're patting themselves on the back. This is a huge success in their minds. Because why? Because they eliminated their problem with most of their problem with overcrowding. They kicked that can down the road to somebody else, namely the counties, and they decreased their budget. They're saving money. And guess what? The money they gave us is not enough to cover the costs. So how'd they save the money? They put it on the counties. And the sheriff talked about it with his fellow sheriffs throughout the county, as the chief talked about with his association with the Cal Chiefs Association. Our dilemma is being played out in all 58 counties and probably all 400 police jurisdictions throughout the state. We got shafted in the end here. And the state thinks it's a great deal because guess what? They made us pay the buck. And they've done that to us. And so we're suffering, and we're going to continue to suffer. The final thing I will say, before I ask one more comment from Supervisor Baugh, when you get around to your turn again. It was a great presentation as Supervisor Kehoe said, from the sheriff, from the chief probation officer, from the chief police last night at the workshop about all of the problems dealing with AB 109 and what it's done to us. And it's not just the people coming back. Remember, it's the people who no longer go. That's the bigger problem. When they got through all that presentation, and the council then said, okay, next on the agenda is the ideas and suggestions and options and plans. The mayor turns to the council and says, okay, this is our chance to tell them how to change it, what to do, whatever it is. It was the loudest pregnant pause I had ever heard. Because, and they're intelligent people, but they recognize after being told about all the workings of this thing, this is an impossible solution or problem that has been put upon us to be solved. It requires a new jail. It requires a new jail. And I disagree with Supervisor Kehoe to some degree that we're creating a new prison inside our community. But the problem is there is no funding. There is no funding. The state, and the state's going to hit us again very shortly. And what's going to happen is that if we even commit, I think, to continue down this road to the next step for $300,000, how can I commit to that when I think the chance of success isn't even 10% that we could find the funding for this jail? I told the sheriff the other day, I says, if it was a 50-50 chance, I might go for that. I might be willing to gamble $300,000 to gamble for $35 million. But not when it's 10% or less. I mean, that's 3 deputies for the sheriff for 1 year. He needs more deputies now. So even the $7 million you talked about is not the whole number, because the sheriff knows that we cut him for the last 3 years, and he's already short 20 or 30 people. So I just think it's an impossible task, and all we're going to do is bind ourselves to a whole lot of debt without any really realistic possibility of actually paying that, at least in the near future. And the only thing I want to ask for you to comment later on, Supervisor Ball, because I think I appreciate your point. I think it's worth discussing is what are those options that you'd like to throw out? We'd like to hear some more about that. So I will yield the floor to Supervisor Hartman.
Thank you. I pressed my button back when Supervisor Baugh was speaking because I wanted to argue with you.
Okay.
Not really. I want to agree with you. And I am certainly not suggesting that we give up the fight. We all are in agreement, the entire community is in agreement that we have a problem. And we have to find that solutions. And Chairman Modi, you just addressed this in your comments. We have to find other solutions. You're exactly right. The state's kicking the can, and then we're supposed to pick that up and run with it because we see this grant or this funding for a jail, and that will solve our problems. But we're just pushing it out there. Then we're kicking that can because we can't fund it. So I don't want to keep hounding on this. Everybody's brought up really good points, and we clearly care about this and know that there's a problem. We have to come together as a community. We do need our cities to be involved. We need to find ways to fund all of these programs and options and methods of addressing the public safety issues that we have in our community.
Supervisor Haas.
Yeah, thank you. There is a possibility in the future, you mentioned the cities again, and I still will say that the cities could come forward and help us with this because they do produce a lot of the inmates. But there are things in the wind out there. There's maybe another wind farm come that we could get some income off of. And what if, just what if we would have had a Bass Pro Shop or a Cabela's down there on the freeway? Think of the income that would have brought into the county to help us with this solution, besides producing a lot of good jobs. Jobs are still the key issue with these people that are coming back to us. Without a job, it's pretty tough to keep them out of the system again. So I tell you, we need to build something in this county. That's how you grow wealth. That's how you get revenue taxes from property and also from sales tax, which we desperately need to fill in the gaps.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Keel. Thank you. Yes, sir. For the three reasons that I have stated, I am going to move that we decline to accept state funding for a new jail under the aegis of AB 900 Phase 2.
I'll second.
Under discussion, Supervisor Ball.
Thank you, Chair Modi. Recognizing the obvious that we do not have the ability to fund this. The purpose of my discussion is that I don't want the discussion to end here. I was really appreciative to hear your willingness, Chair Modi and Supervisor Hartman, to continue this discussion. Mr. Lees, you also, in your presentation, made some thoughts as to what alternatives are for Shasta County. I think it's very important that we as a Board of Supervisors perhaps agree today to give direction to staff to bring us together in a forum where we could continue this discussion, because it's not going to happen today, where we could gather those who can contribute to this discussion and consider what the viable alternatives are. This is a huge decision for the county. The question remains, if not the jail, then what? And that's the question that I would like to see us answer, and I believe it's our responsibility to do so. Great discussion, everybody.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Well, just in response now to your observation, Supervisor Baugh, the motion that I made terminates our relationship with state funding for the jail. I agree, there may be other options that we ought to entertain, but this will end this matter.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
I hope that it won't end discussion in how to deal with the issue, though.
I agree.
Other comments? I think it still begs the question of the $300,000, and as much as we could say as far as future jobs and et cetera, that's the coulda, woulda, shoulda, and that's not today. And it's sort of, one in the hand, two in the bush question, and I just don't know in reality how I can commit $300,000 to something that I see has just really as much as I think it's needed. I mean, I always have. And I've advocated with the sheriff 5-6 years ago when I was the police chief that we need a new jail, and I still agree with him, but there's no funding for it. And, and someone even said once before, why doesn't the state, if they're going to help us build a jail, why don't they else pay to house the inmates? Well, they should, but that's how they're saving their money. They're kicking the money down. That's why our $6 million we're getting from AB 109 isn't enough to do all the stuff that they're supposed to be doing at their end. They've just said, okay, you do it, and you eat the deficit. Okay, any other comments? There is a motion and a second. Did you want to comment, Sheriff?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Chairman Modi, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your due diligence in this. All throughout this process, which started back with AB 900 Phase 1, we were actually skeptical about that time of the ability to fund such a project. We were not successful with that proposal, excuse me, but then along called Phase 2. Mr. Lees, all along the way, has been nothing but candid and open about the challenges that we face. And that situation has gotten worse as time has progressed with the state of California, with its economy, its impacts on the counties, and now AB 109. And we've had our backs up against the wall. As sheriff, I think it was very important to at least go down this road, explore the opportunities and the challenges that we had. I knew that it was a huge mountain to climb up and to see if we could make that goal. I do recognize the challenges that we have here as the county and our team here with the budget. And you don't have to be a major in public finance to figure out that, quite frankly, that the money is not there. But I do thank all of you for your input, your support for the project as it's going along, and recognizing the challenges that we have. For myself as sheriff, I still am committed to public service, public safety, operating the jail, working with my law enforcement partners, probation chief on exploring opportunities to where we can have offender accountability, where we can have public safety and keep these people incarcerated where there be alternatives or through the use of these contract beds. And then if other opportunities that come down through the state for other funding, maybe not as big as a bite of the apple that presents themselves, I'm sure I'll be here before the board presenting those opportunities for your decision as well. And like, again, thank you for your time all throughout this whole process, to even though it might have been a bit of a journey and not necessarily successful in the vote, but at least to be able to explore those opportunities that we've had before us.
Thank you, Sheriff. Supervisor Haas.
Please bring us back or take a look at the detention center too. I think that would be an important part of the formula.
We are exploring that. Captain Bertain and my program manager, Dave Sokol, we're giving that a very hard look and seeing what opportunities are there. And of course, I'll be back knocking on Mr. Leese's door.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you've done a fantastic job through this, Tom. Believe me. It's not easy.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And Mr. Keel, if I could ask you just to restate your motion so we make it very clear that we're voting which way.
The motion is, excuse me, the motion is that we decline the offer of the state of California to accept state funding for the construction of a new jail under the aegis of AB 900 Phase 2.
Thank you, Mr. Keough. Any questions? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for the time and effort and conversation. We will now go into closed session. Anticipated time is 15 minutes. It's regarding conference with legal counsel and on anticipated litigation with one case. After the closed session, a reportable action will be made in open session. We are recessed.